Welcome to 10 Minutes a Day, a daily reading of the Catholic Church's social encyclicals. Today we continue with Populorum Progressio, written by Pope Paul VI in 1967. Now in trade relations between the developing and the highly developed economies, there is a great disparity in their overall situation and in their freedom of action. In order that international trade be human and moral, social justice requires that it restore to the participants a certain equality of opportunity. To be sure, this equality will not be attained at once, but we must begin to work toward it now by injecting a certain amount of equality into discussions and price talks. Here again, international agreements on a broad scale can help a great deal. They could establish general norms for regulating prices, promoting production facilities, and favoring certain infant industries. Isn't it plain to everyone that such attempts to establish greater justice in international trade would be of great benefit to the developing nations, that they would produce lasting results? There are other obstacles to the creation of a more just social order and to the development of world solidarity: nationalism and racism. It is quite natural that nations recently arrived at the political independence should be quite jealous of their newfound but fragile unity and make every effort to preserve it. It is also quite natural for nations with a long-standing cultural tradition to be proud of their traditional heritage. But this commendable attitude should be further ennobled by love, a love for the whole family of man. Haughty pride in one's own nation disunites nations and poses obstacles to their true welfare. It is especially harmful where the weak state of the economy calls for a pooling of information, efforts, and financial resources to implement programs of development and to increase commercial and cultural interchange. And racism. Racism is not the exclusive attitude of young nations, where sometimes it hides beneath the rivalries of clans and political parties with heavy losses for justice and at the risk of civil war. During the colonial period, it often flared up between the colonists and the indigenous population and stood in the way of mutually profitable understanding, often giving rise to bitterness in the wake of genuine injustices. It is still an obstacle to collaboration among disadvantaged nations and a cause for division and hatred within countries where, whenever individuals and families see the inviolable rights of the human person held in scorn, as they themselves are unjustly subjected to a regime of discrimination because of their race or their color. This state of affairs, which bodes ill for the future, causes us great distress and anguish, but we cherish this hope that distrust and selfishness among nations will eventually be overcome by a stronger desire for mutual collaboration and a heightened sense of solidarity. We hope that developing nations will take advantage of their geographical proximity to one another to organize on a broader territorial base and to pool their efforts for the development of a given region. We hope that they will draw up joint programs, coordinate investment funds wisely, divide production quotas fairly, and exercise management over the marketing of these products. We also hope that multilateral and broad international associations will undertake the necessary work of organization to find ways of helping needy nations so that these nations may escape from the fetters now binding them, so that they themselves may discover the road to cultural and social progress while remaining faithful to the native genius of their land. That is the goal toward which we must work. An ever more effective world solidarity should allow all peoples to become the artisans of their destiny. Up to now, relations between nations have too often been governed by force. Indeed, that is the hallmark of past history. May the day come when international relationships will be characterized by respect and friendship, when mutual cooperation will be the hallmark of collaborative efforts, and when concentrated effort for the betterment of all nations will be regarded as a duty by every nation. The developing nations now emerging are asking that they be allowed to take part in the construction of a better world, a world which would provide better protection for every man's rights and duties, It is certainly a legitimate demand, so that everyone must heed and fulfill it. Human society is sorely ill. The cause is not so much the depletion of natural resources, nor their monopolistic control by a privileged few. It is rather the weakening of brotherly ties between individuals and nations. We cannot insist too much on the duty of giving foreigners an hospitable reception. It is a duty imposed by human solidarity and by Christian charity, and is incumbent upon families and educational institutions in the host nations. Young people, in particular, must be given a warm reception. More and more families and hostels must open their doors to them. This must be done, first of all, that they may be shielded from feelings of loneliness, distress, and despair that would sap their strength. It is also necessary so that they may be guarded against the corrupting influence of their new surroundings, for the contrast between the dire poverty of their homeland and the lavish luxury of their present surroundings is, as it were, forced upon them. And finally, it must be done so that they may be protected from subversive notions and temptations to violence, which gain headway in their minds when they ponder their wretched plight. In short, they should be welcomed in the spirit of brotherly love, so that the concrete example of wholesome living may give them a high opinion of authentic Christian charity and of spiritual values. We are deeply distressed by what happens to many of these young people. They come to wealthier nations to acquire scientific knowledge, professional training, and a high-quality education that will enable them to serve their own land with greater effectiveness. They do get a fine education, but very often they lose their respect for the priceless cultural heritage of their native land. Immigrant workers should also be given a warm welcome. Their living conditions are often inhuman. They must scrimp on their earnings in order to send help to their families who have remained behind in their native land in poverty. We would also say a word to those who travel to the newly industrialized nations for business purposes. Industrialists, merchants, managers, and representatives of large business concerns. It often happens that in their own land they do not lack a social sense. Why is it then that they give in to baser motives of self-interest when they set out to do business in the developing countries? Their more favored position should rather spur them on to be initiators of social progress and human betterment in these lands. Their organizational experience should help them to figure out ways to make intelligent use of the labor of the indigenous population, to develop skilled workers, to train engineers and other management men, to foster these people's initiatives, and prepare them for offices of ever greater responsibility. In this way, they will prepare these people to take over the burden of management in the near future. In the meantime, justice must prevail in dealing with superiors and their subordinates. Legitimate contracts should govern these employment relations, spelling out the duties involved. And no one, whatever his status may be, should be unjustly subjected to the arbitrary whim of another. We can certainly rejoice over the fact that an ever-increasing number of experts are being sent out on development missions by private groups, bilateral associations, and international organizations. These specialists must not act as overlords, but as helpers and fellow workers. The people of a country soon discover whether their new helpers are motivated by goodwill or not, whether they want to enhance human dignity or merely try out their special techniques. The expert's message will surely be rejected by these people if it is not inspired by brotherly love. Technical expertise is necessary, but it must be accompanied by concrete signs of genuine love. Untainted by overbearing nationalistic pride or any trace of racial discrimination, experts should learn how to work in collaboration with everyone. They must realize that their expert knowledge does not give them superiority in every sphere of life. The culture which shaped their living habits does contain certain universal human elements, but it cannot be regarded as the only culture, nor can it regard other cultures with haughty disdain. If it is introduced into foreign lands, it must undergo adaptation. Thus, those who undertake such work must realize that they are guests in a foreign land. They must see to it that they studiously observe its historical traditions, its rich culture, and its particular genius. A rapprochement between cultures will thus take place, bringing benefits to both sides.